Yes, we are now live. Okay.
Hey, we're live.
All right. Hello. So, all right. Chocolate covered gummy bear. So, we are Scott and Jenn from Walk with History, and this is our first live stream. So, we are going to start off treating this somewhat like a podcast. If you've listened to our Talk with History podcast, we kind of do it in a host type format where I host a little bit, and Jenn will answer the questions, tell us the smart stuff, and I'll inject my occasionally smart opinion. And as people come on, because we posted the live stream for 8:30, if you want to ask questions on this live stream, just ask questions and we'll interrupt and we'll stop and we'll say hello and we'll answer your questions. But really what we're going to start with is who we are, how we started Walk with History, and what we've done and kind of things that have surprised us in the past year. So, Jenn, why don't you tell us a little bit about how Walk with History got started?
Well, I just want to tell everyone, if you want to share this, if you have people that you think might be interested in hearing about Colonial Williamsburg or Historic House or have any history questions.
Or really any YouTube questions, right? We've been fortunate enough to get over 2,000 subscribers in a year, which is for the average YouTube channel is pretty difficult to do. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask or share this to someone else who's interested in history or interested in starting a YouTube channel. Just in general, we'll answer either questions, whether historical or YouTube in nature, right? She'll probably answer the history questions and I'll answer the YouTube and video stuff.
Yes.
So Jenn, why don't you tell us about how we got started on Walk with History?
I want to make sure people can hear us okay. Is everything?
Well, it depends. They got to say something. So if you can't hear us, let us know. If you can hear us, give this video a like, give the live stream a like, or put something in the comments. I see that there's 5 folks here. I don't know if they're here for us or if they're here just because it popped up in the algorithm. There we go. Hey, Greg. So Greg said something, so he can hear us.
Okay, great. So
awesome.
How we started. It was the pandemic. It was the beginning of the pandemic. And we had moved. So I don't know if people know this, but Scott is active duty military. And we were living in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I had just finished my master's degree of American history. But it's hard to find a job when you're moving. And the pandemic had started, and I had decided to give up social media for Lent. Now, we're not Catholic, but I like to give it up every now and then to have a social media break. And I was watching YouTube. And so I would look up like John Wayne's grave or John Wayne Museum. I see a trend. I like John Wayne. But I would look up Maureen O'Hara or other movie stars or museums I was interested in. And there would be some content, but it wouldn't be that good, I thought. And people who were talking about things would not be connecting them historically. So why should you care? What are the impacts these people have made for you? Who influenced them? How did they influence others today? So I thought, well, I have a master's of history and I should use it to do something. So I walked outside of my office and I said, Scott, what if I start a YouTube channel?
Yeah. And so real quick, before we jump onto that part of the story, I want to say a quick hello to everybody who's jumped in and said hello. Hi, Mom. Andrea Mitchell there. Greg, you were here on our test live stream. Charles, Ray, Jim, Abel. So I recognize all you guys. It's really cool to see you guys joining the live stream because I recognize your names from the comments. I'm really happy to see the community here. So I just want to say a quick hello. Again, please feel free to ask questions. So Jenn walked out. She had thought about Walk with History and said, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel.
Yes. And Scott had been on YouTube for a while with our family, had started stuff with our family and a master's in things. And so he knew the technical side. So he's like, yeah, this sounds great. You can do the content side and I can do the technical side. So I had started a Facebook channel when we moved to Memphis because that's where I got my master's degree, the University of Memphis. Yep. And we're kind of Yankees, California Yankee. So living in Memphis, I decided to start a Facebook channel to kind of educate our family about the South and post things that maybe people didn't know about. So one of my first videos was Nathan Bedford Forrest, because there was a statue to him in Memphis.
Come on.
And we had no idea who he was, besides kind of the connection to Forrest Gump. But there's a statue to him. So I wanted to kind of teach that to our family. So I went to that park and I talked about that statue and who he was and what he did and why there's a statue.
And you can actually, and real quick, I'm going to say, hey, Tommy. Tommy's a Navy buddy of mine.
Hey, Chris.
Tommy, I'm not going to say what I'm drinking because this is YouTube and this is a child-friendly show. I'll just I'll say I poured it into this so that I didn't have to show it on the live stream. But it's tasty, and there's 3 letters, I, P, and A. So that you should figure it out from there. But just say hi to Mom, say hi to Tommy and Chris from Whitdock Cemetery. How you doing, man? It's really good to see you in the live stream. He's a fellow YouTuber. So it's really cool to see family, community, friends like Tommy and Chris from Whitdocks. If anybody in this live stream right now, when we're done, go check out Chris's channel. It's great.
Cemetery content. It's really cool.
Cemetery content. So if you see our very first video, it's Jen walking with her phone in vertical video, which drives me crazy, and she's learned.
But that was how it initially started.
That's how it started.
Just kind of teach my friends and family some of these idiosyncrasies of the South that we didn't even know. Now, since I did that, the statue's been removed and there's been a lot of change. I talk about all of that. So as a historian, my job is to just educate, right? Just to tell you what happened, the facts, this is what's going on. And the judgment is yours. Like, I feel like my job as a historian, and this is what I learned in my degree, is I'm teaching you how to think, not what to think. And you should feel, my job is to make you feel comfortable with trust. You should trust what I'm telling you is the facts that are out there. And I'm not trying to push it one way or the other. I'm just trying to tell you the facts. And historians who have looked at the primary documents or have talked to people who are actually there, and I'm telling you that information. So that way, when you're learning about it and you're realizing the impact this thing or this person has on you, you're feeling like Jen is giving us trustworthy information. I also make sure that if we find out something after the fact, we learn something after the fact, we'll always put it into the comments.
Yeah. So I liked Abel's comments about William and Mary, because William and Mary is like, 2 blocks from us here, where we are right now. Yes. And then Ray, thank you for the kind words about learning stuff from the YouTube channel. So one of the things that I'll say that I learned as Jen was going through her graduate degree and learning about history is how critical of an eye historians are, quote unquote, kind of supposed to approach history, and how factual and almost scientific to a fact, to a point, learning about source documents and primary documents. And hey, just because I'm reading a book by an author who says that they're a historian, what kind of things do they cite? What are their sources? Are they primary, secondary sources?
Yes.
Like, what kind of lens are they seeing things through? And so with that, we started doing the YouTube channel. Yes. And Jen kind of wanted to put her historian's take on places that she's always been interested in. And one of the things that the reason this kind of clicked when she said, hey, I want to start this YouTube channel. I've never been a huge history fan. I joke about this all the time. Now I'm running a YouTube channel with my wife. We have 2 podcasts, although we need to be better about getting back on the podcast train. But I had been dabbling in YouTube for a couple years prior. I had a bunch of gear and I had this, that, and the other. And she said, hey, I want to do this YouTube thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understood right away that it could work. Yeah. I knew right away that it could work. I was like,
this content we call it evergreen content. So if you're in the YouTube world, evergreen content means this is history. It doesn't really change unless someone uncovers something. I'll probably make a follow-up video. But in history, Colonial George Washington did and Washington Crossing, That's not going to change.
Right.
So when I bring you Washington Crossing, what are George Washington's motivators that day? Who's he talking to that day?
What actually happened?
What actually happened that day?
The location of Washington's Crossing will forever be the same spot.
So people can watch that, and that won't change. It's evergreen. But if there's something comes out, if something is uncovered, a letter is found from George Washington that might add to that event, then there might be a follow-up video. But historians that would be a groundbreaking historic find. And then that would be something that would make some kind of hopefully mainstream media will talk about that.
Right. And so we, once we started doing these videos.
They're still digging at Jamestown, and they're still digging here.
That's right, Abel.
Yes. And there's so much to be dug still and to put together.
So again, we started up the YouTube channel. We did the first couple of videos and we started figuring things out. And it clicked for me as like, I love doing the filming and the behind the camera work and this, that, and the other. I'm not afraid to be on camera, but to be perfectly honest, I think people enjoy watching her talk about history more than anything I could talk about on camera, because she's so excited and passionate about it.
Yes. And there have been things that I was very enthusiastic about. Maureen O'Hara's grave was something I was very, very enthusiastic about. And Scott just didn't. Like, who, why? And I was adamant about that because first, I hadn't seen anyone do it on YouTube. Second, it's in Arlington, and I don't think a lot of people realize Maureen O'Hara is in Arlington.
Yeah.
I wanted to do Arlington anyway, so it was just very important that we did all of that. And so that video took off. And so I felt like I had tapped into something that I think since then more people have done Maureen O'Hara in Arlington. But I talk a lot about her, like her influence in movies. Well, she was with Lucy when Lucy met Desi for the first time.
Yeah, Lucille Ball.
Yes, I talk about her really good. She had a really good collaboration with John Ford and John Wayne, and they made a lot of movies together, and they worked well together. And I talk about some of that magic that happened. And so those are the things that so I also, in my master's degree, really centered on racial justice. And Emmett Till was something I really researched because it was an area that I had to go to for another case I was studying. And I went to all the locations because they were difficult to find. And I had to piece together a lot of history to put the whole story together. And I wanted to show that to my viewers. Like, that's not easy. And I told Scott, it's almost like the people don't want you to put that all together. And there were some interesting instances when I would go like to Money, Mississippi, or I would go into those places and people would come out on their front porch and like cross their arms and look at me. Like, even though I'm white, I shouldn't be there anyway. I shouldn't be doing this. So I felt that was important history to tell. So those are some stories that those videos have taken off. And I think it's important because those are American history stories that are important to tell.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Jeannie. So just to step back a little bit, Jen's very passionate about a couple, various topics, and not in just history in general. But when we saw that first video, our 10th video, which was the Arlington video, and the Maureen O'Hara, all the movie stars in Arlington, and we saw it really take off. It got picked up by the algorithm, as they say, and it was quite an interesting, cool experience for us, something that I'd never experienced with my own little personal projects and this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden it started getting hundreds and thousands of views. And I think it's over 50,000 views, 55 or 56 right now. It was really cool, one, to see there is people who are, from a non-history fan, there's other people who are interested in this history stuff, right? And from there, just to see the community like
Abel,
like you guys.
Story, Abel.
Oh yes, thank you for sharing those stories.
Yeah.
And really learning and seeing the community out there for folks like you who are here and seeing that. Now, we also did get, when you have a video get that big, and Chris knows this probably much more than we do. You get a video that big, you get people trying to just kind of complain
Yeah.
and say like, their own kind of negative things like, hey, how come you're breathing so hard? It's
You
like,
have to have a thick skin if you're going to do this
we're
work.
like sprinting around Arlington watching 6 kids with our entire family. And we're also trying to, do this, that, and the other. Oh, and by the way, I'm trying to hold the camera and talk about history at the same time. So
Plus, you have to
that's why I'm breathing hard.
You have to walk at Arlington. You can't drive.
Right. So it was just such an interesting experience as we kind of take you guys through this. Oh, Jean, thank you for signing up. She joined as a member. So
thank you.
Real quick, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to Jeannie. I've known Jeannie since before I can probably remember. And Jeannie, you can probably attest to that. You probably knew me before I could even talk. And so what she's done, if you see her in the chat, there's 2 ways that you can support the channel. Actually, I'll say there's 3. There's the gift shop, which we kind of put on our website. You can go to walkwithhistorygiftshop.com. You can buy mugs and phone cases and t-shirts. And I have a sweatshirt that I wear all the time. So walkwithhistorygiftshop.com, or you can go to our Patreon page, which for $5 a month, you can get behind the scenes stuff. I actually I put a Patreon post probably about an hour ago about what we've been doing for the past couple of days here in Williamsburg. And so we'll do kind of behind the scenes stuff. You'll get early access to the videos over at Patreon.
You get episode maps.
You get episode travel guides.
So if you want to go to that city and walk around where we walked, we'll put those locations for you.
Yeah. And all this stuff is at our website, walkwithhistory.net. The third way that you can support, which is the least expensive, but you don't really, I'll say that you don't get the other stuff, is you can just join right here on YouTube. I think it's $2 a month. You get a little member badge, and you can actually, there's little stickers that you can post. I'll put out a community post about how to do that. And so there's 3 ways you can support. You can join right here on YouTube, which is $2 a month. And you just kind of support, right? You buy me coffee so that I can sit there and drink coffee while I'm editing all these videos.
It helps with gas. It helps with
all that stuff. You can find us over on Patreon, which I think we have the link in our, we'll put the link in the description here, but it's also, you can find all the stuff at our website, walkwithhistory.net, or you can go to the gift shop. If you don't want to subscribe to a monthly thing, you can buy a t-shirt, you can buy a coffee mug, you can buy
socks.
We just made socks. Jen was super excited about I Love History socks. Apparently those are a really big thing.
They're a big thing. So like Chris said, you make one mistake and everyone points it out. Yeah. That is true. Or even if you don't make a mistake. So there are history, I will say, fallacies out there that people believe are true. And I will point them out sometimes in a video, or sometimes I won't acknowledge them, and I'll say, this is what happened, but people will like to say, that's not what happened. This is what happened. So there are many times that I go, no, the facts have stated this, or this is what the facts show. And I'll be very diplomatic about it. But I find on YouTube, you have people who are very supportive, but you will have people who it's easy to criticize. But so you have to have a thick skin. If you're going to do this, you have to do this because you want to do this and you're confident in what you're doing and what you're putting out. So, but people will criticize you.
Yeah. And Abel, yes, we do have a PayPal business account. It's our email, which I believe is in, you can find in our about section through YouTube, or it's walkwithhistory@outlook.com. So walkwithhistory@outlook.com. I'll type it in the comments in the chat here in just a second. So if you do want to send us $2 or $5 or whatever, just a one-time thing, and you don't want anything, we appreciate that. Yeah. More than anything, we appreciate having you guys here as a community.
Yes. We appreciate
the comments, and I love seeing recognizing all the names on the comments and everything like that. It's just amazing. So I will put our PayPal email. That's also an email if you can reach out to it.
Angels on the head of a pin time. What is that?
So
being in the military gives you a thick skin. That is for sure.
That's for sure.
And being a female pilot 20 years ago gives you a thick skin. So it's funny. So my Arlington video, I actually go to one of the first female naval aviators' graves. And I talk about her because she's just a couple years before me and how she influenced me. But I mean, I tell people all the time, I have such a thick skin. Like, I don't care what other people say about me. Usually I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ray, I'm glad that you liked it, that we got to show you where Arlie was buried. There's been some, you would like Chris's channel. You should check out Witch Docs.
He's
he
like
does
one
a
of
lot
the
stuff.
farthest out to in Arlington. Oh my gosh, walking to his grave.
Yeah, his was like so the second time we went to Arlington, and we were still surprised that video didn't take off like the first one did, but you know, it's whatever. We went and it was July or August.
Oh, yeah.
So it was hot and humid.
We had the kids.
And you know, we probably dealt
feed the
with
fire. I know, Scott, you have to feed the fire, baby.
Oh yeah, we do.
So I mean, I'll talk about it.
Thanks, Tommy.
So we walked 7 miles, and I was wearing the black Walk with History shirt that day, and I sweat through it. Good thing you couldn't tell in the video. Like, I'm drenched in sweat because you can't drive in Arlington unless you're going to a funeral. You can't drive. So we walked 7 miles. We did other people who are influencers to media. The guy from Superman, who I love so much, and we did Charles Durning, who I thought was so important to do. If you see that video, Charles Durning is like an unsung hero. He was in so many battles in World War II and survived them, and he was on his D-Day, and then he's a character actor. It just really meant a lot to go to his grave, and then of course to Ermi as well. That was really great to go see his grave as well. Because again, he's another influencer, right? A person who really was in the Marine Corps and was supposed to be a consult on a film. But the person they hired to do the job couldn't be as good as him. So he walked in and filled it and then had a huge movie career from it. So I thought that was really awesome. Yeah. Audie Murphy was such an honor to go to. So Arlington is very, oh, History Hunters, hi!
Oh, hey! Sorry, I'm showing you like my backside here as you jump in.
It's they try to keep it very clean. There are some things you can put on graves, but flags, you can only put on flags I think it's twice a year, Memorial Day and Veterans Day, and they take them off. I don't think they only keep them on for a week and then they take them off. So they try to keep things very rudimentary, uniform there. But Audie Murphy is allowed to have flowers, and he's allowed to have flowers all year. So his grave is marked that way. Not only can you kind of walk to it, but you'll notice the flowers on his grave. So that's kind of neat.
There we go.
Yeah, Lee Marvin just had a regular headstone. It was very interesting. A lot of people do. There's some people in Arlington who can have more elaborate headstones, but you don't get more space. So you can have maybe a little bit bigger of a headstone, but really your space is limited there. So yeah, he was I'm always impressed by that. Who else has basic headstones? So John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart. So I'm always impressed by people who are humble in their end of their life. I'm standing for light and right at Knox Bay Farm. Oh, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate that. It's cool to see History Hunters in the group. I love watching. He's great. So History Hunters, again, when I started doing YouTube, I started watching some channels, and History Hunters was what I started watching because he did not only things I was interested in, but he had a format that I liked. He had a format where he told you what he was doing. He kind of had an introduction, and then he was very well researched. And I liked that about him. So I reached out to him. I asked him some questions. He was very helpful. He's been a huge support this whole time. So I'm very thankful to History Hunters. They're great. And like I said, they do stuff that I'm interested in. So
yeah, based out of California. So a lot of California. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff there. So yes. Jen would come to me and she would say, "Hey, look at History Hunters. Like, are you familiar with this area?" And having grown up in California, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know where Bakersfield is, or I know where this area is." And
yes, and the funny thing, Greg, is Lee Marvin is right beside Joe Louis, but numbered, they're not. So when I went there, I did Joe Louis's grave, and then I'm like, "Where's Lee Marvin's grave?" And number wise, it should be like down the row. So I'm walking down the row and I'm looking and I'm like, where's Lee Marvin? And I'm about to give up, and I'm walking past past Joe Louis again, and it's right there. And I'm like, how is that number? It's not sequential. They have numbers on the back of the graves.
There's an Arlington app. If you ever go, you can
Mm-hmm.
download like it's like ANC, Arlington National Cemetery app. It does a pretty good job if you try to look people up, of pointing you to the right grave. But you need
to know their real name, not like a movie name.
Not Maureen O'Hara.
It's not Maureen O'Hara. She's buried under her husband's name.
Yeah.
So you won't find her under Maureen O'Hara.
It's Marie. What was her last name?
I forget now.
Yeah, well, go watch her video. Again.
But yeah, she's buried under her husband's name.
Charleston.
Yeah, we want to do this.
So we want to get out there. So we want to go.
We're
going to go to Richmond because there's Hollywood Cemetery out there, and Jen was just telling me today there's a ton of history. I mean, Civil War and all that stuff up in Richmond, the Hollywood Cemetery up there. Mm-hmm. So Chris from Wood Docs has done a couple videos, and we want to go up there just to see it ourselves.
There's a lot of history. Mom asked the question, I know so many details. How does it get weeded out? Scott helps. It does help. So Scott gets bored with the details sometimes, and he'll cut them out. And then when I always get to look at the videos before he posts them, and I'm like, that story makes no sense. You missed this whole part. He goes, well, that part was boring. I said, it's boring or not, it needs to be in there because it connects the history.
Right.
So he'll put something in. Sometimes that's where he puts the little flashes on the side. We try to make sure that the details are in there.
Yeah,
we
found a decent balance between Charles Blair. Yeah, Maureen Blair. Thank you, Jeannie.
Mm-hmm. That's what she's buried.
We found a good balance between me trying to tell the story, because Jen's often just trying to like spew all the facts, and I'm trying to tell a story within a 12-minute to 15-minute video. And so I'm working on that with the facts that she's given me. Mm-hmm. And then so I'll cut a bunch of stuff, and I won't let her edit over my shoulder. I won't let her do it. I said, go away. You're not allowed to sit here while I'm editing. And so I'll edit the whole thing. I'll have it 98% done. I'll have the whole video done, and I'll let her watch it. And if she's like, yeah, hey, it's good. Great. You've got everything in there. Awesome. Or she's like, hey, you left this out. It's really super important, and here's why. Mm-hmm. And so then we'll work together from there to kind of figure out that last 5% of the video or so.
Yes.
So we found a good balance, but it's a grind, right? I mean, you guys, YouTube folks know.
And if you want to be consistent and put out a video a week, which we want to do, it is a commitment. You have to be committed to this, and filming and editing and putting it all together. Your question about the American Revolution Museum. Yes, I have been there in Philadelphia. It is really awesome. And we have not done a video from there, but it's a great museum. If you've never been to the American. So they're big artifacts. So I also have a graduate certificate in museum studies. So a graduate certificate is about half of a master's degree. And so I did museum studies so I could learn about artifacts and how the artifacts tell the story, and also how to preserve the artifacts. So their big artifact at the American Revolution Museum is George Washington's tent from the American Revolution. So his tent that he would use to have dinner and meetings and planning, that tent is their big artifact. They open it up in glass. You can't touch it or anything. But the story behind that tent, it was important for Arlington, because that tent, if you know anything about Arlington, Robert E. Lee was married to George Washington's ancestor, his, I think, great-great-granddaughter. And when she had to leave Arlington quickly during the Civil War, she left the tent behind. And it was her enslaved woman, Selma Gray, who saved the tent and kept it with her family for years. And then it made its way through other people's hands and finally to the museum. Now there's 2 tents. There's also one at Yorktown. So there's a Yorktown tent and there's American Revolution tent in Philadelphia. Both of them were George Washington's tent. One was a personal tent. One was his professional tent. So basically one he ate and slept and dined in. The other one he did all his planning in. But they're both cool to see. I know. We need to get our videos. Again, we do one a week. We just did 50. We just hit 50. We did Henrietta Lacks, which I thought was very important to do her story. And so, yes, it's been almost a year, right? So it's
actually been exactly a year.
So video a week, right?
Yeah,
We're
I think
50.
within a couple of days.
So and this video, we're staying in a colonial house in Colonial Williamsburg for our anniversary. It's our 15-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And so we're at the Lewis house. So again, a connection to George Washington. The Lewis house is built on property that was owned by Martha Washington's grandfather. And this house is, if you ever come to Colonial Williamsburg, you can rent the whole house. We rented the whole house.
Yeah.
And it's a nice place. You're right beside the Williamsburg Inn. And our video will show you how close you are in proximity. And they build the fire for you. And it's just really nice to be immersed. Again, I always say Colonial Williamsburg is like a Disneyland for historians. So it's nice to kind of be immersed in the house and everything. The furniture is comfortable enough. Happy anniversary. Thank you. Thank you. But it's really cool to live, to be staying this close to history. So again, Martha Washington's grandfather probably didn't live in this house. This property was his. It's like about a block size. His house is about, I would say, about 2 house sizes over, but there's no houses there. There's just gardens. And that's a huge house. So if I rented that house, it would be like with my extended family, because there's 2 queen size bedrooms. There's a big upstairs. You can rent that house as well. That was probably the house that Martha Washington's grandfather lived in. He probably rented this space to someone who built their house here, but this was still his property. So that's where we're at. And it's a little bit smaller. So for 2 people.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about, kind of continuing the long story here of how we started the YouTube channel and why we think it's viable. And for someone who like me, I'm not a huge history buff, right? However, you put the camera in my hand and Jen tells me like, hey, I want to go make a video. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Right. I'll try. That scratches my artistic itch.
Yes.
And for me, I like the process of doing that. So if you can figure out that balance, and props to folks like History Hunters and Chris from Wit Docs, who are interested in the whole kit and caboodle, from history all the way through that process. But, for me, I legitimately see, and I think other channels can say this too, is this can be like a part-time business for me while I finish up my Navy career. And I think we can build this into an actual business. And
I think it's really great that when we take you to the location, right? We take you to where it happened. We're standing in the places where giants of history have stood. We're standing in the place where this actually took place, where this actually happened. And there's something about being in that space, being in that part of whatever that of the world or America where something happened, that's powerful. And I think, it's great to learn the history and to see it, but to actually be there and to stand there. I think there's some stories too that I really like. Strong Vincent. I wanted people to really know more about the everyday person that does something amazing, which I do think is American history in a nutshell. It's the normal, everyday American who's doing something amazing. And so Strong Vincent was one of those for me.
And one of the things that's been fun about our channel too is there's some channels that are a little bit more specific. Whether there's YouTube channels out there that focus a lot on World War II, that focus on Civil War or overseas stuff, or even Chris. Chris is more cemetery centric, but he tells a story. He's very good at telling that story.
So we do a little bit of all of that. That's kind of like, so our channel is not into one part of American history. It's all of American history. I do pulp culture. I do movies. I do filming locations. I do people. We do all different types of history. And I feel like it all influences you in some way. So we do graveyards. I think graves are a great way. Cemeteries are a great way to tell a story. So we do that as well. But I just feel like it's a lot. There's a lot of different places we can go, a lot of different stories we can tell, but we want to tell all the stories because that's what's so American. Yeah. All of this different people, different walks of life, different backgrounds that are coming together to influence history.
Yeah. And whether I like history or not, my mom pointed out, I actually, my Violet side of the family, through my mother there in the chat, Rowena Benny, I have family history that go all the way back to
the Violets.
The Violets, the George Washington era.
So there's documentation of the Violets doing chores, Violet children doing chores on George Washington's property.
Yeah. So I'm like, I guess super duper American or whatever.
I always tell him I blame him for all the problems then.
Right. So
his ancestors. Because I'm second generation American, so wasn't us.
but that's been one of the things, right? And History Hunters, where did you guys say you're moving to? So we're in Norfolk now, most likely because of my kind of tiny little pocket in the Navy. I'll probably end up back in the Memphis area.
And I know you said that you didn't have the best experience in Memphis, and that's why I want you to come back and visit us. Because I'm sorry you didn't have a great experience in Memphis, and I'll show you a great experience. Because I know where the good barbecue is there. I know where the good places to go, the art museums, and
all the fun history stuff.
Yeah. So I can show you around the neat things. Like one of the things I want to do when we get back to Memphis is Alex Haley isn't far from Memphis, and I went to his hometown of Henning, Tennessee, on the porch where he heard Roots, and then he wrote Roots. I like to do a video about that.
Yes, yeah, I have no idea who Alex Haley is. So that's the balance here. So again, we go back to what's our gauge for videos, and what's our gauge for videos, and my gauge, and I've joked with this with people on some of the podcasts that we've done, is my gauge for a video is if I can get through the video that I just made without losing attention, then it's probably a decent video. Because trying to get someone all the way from the beginning to the end of a video, one, while telling a story, and two, while putting your own take on it, right? Part of our take is, one, Jen's really good. And one of the things I think that she does consistently across all her videos is she talks about the impact that person or that topic or that place has on us today. And I think that's one common thread through our channel that I think eventually will kind of be a key or a foundational piece of future growth, is she really talks about how that character, how that person has impacted America, has impacted you, has impacted whatever, civil rights or women's rights, or, we did a Flashdance video, Flashdance filming locations in Pittsburgh. And sure, it was fun to talk about the movie and the pop culture, but at the end, she talks about how that was kind of an homage, that movie was an homage to women's rights and women's independence.
The bicycle was a very big symbol in Flashdance because Susan B. Anthony spoke about how the bicycle was such a big part of women's independence. Now women could have their own means of transportation. The bicycle could make women so independent. That was a big part of the women's movement.
Right.
And so in Flashdance, she's on her 10-speed all the time. So whether or not you realize that this is connecting women's,
So if there is, even though our history topics are relatively spread out, I would say that that's the one common theme. We tend to lean on American history, obviously.
Yeah.
Until we can kind of, figure out how to get overseas.
And honestly, even studying American history, you can study history, but studying American history, it's not like you don't study the world history. America is influenced by the world. America is influencing the world, and the world is influencing America. So you have to learn what's happening in Europe. You have to learn what's happening in Asia. You have to learn what's happening in Africa and South America. Like, you have to know what's going on in the world to even understand how America is influencing it, and outside of that as well. So yes, and it would be nice to go, overseas and stuff, but there's so much to see in America. There's so much to show. Even I see people asking about going to places, and I want to go to those locations. And we've been lucky with the military to be moved around. So we have kind of gone to different locations and been able to travel. But there's so much we're still not hitting with American history. I grew up in the West. I grew up in Wyoming, and there's so much we're missing about the West. I need to get out there and show Custer's battlefield, and show Fort Laramie, and talk about the Oregon Trail. And there's so many things we're going to do. We are going to bring it to you.
And that's why I'm excited about some of our membership stuff, the episode travel guides. We really, like, if you go to our website, you can kind of get some free previews. The Walk with History. If you go to walkwithhistory.net, you can get some free previews of those episode travel guides. And really what they are is I figured out how to make interactive travel guides. So you can actually there's 5 free ones, and then the other ones, it takes a lot of work to put this together. So it's membership. But for $5 a month, let's say you're going to travel for a month or two over the summer, you can pay for a month or two, and you can get access to all the travel guides that we put together so far, that I've put together so far. And you can actually click on the location. You'll see on a map everywhere that we filmed a video. You can click into that video and you can see individual points where we actually filmed, or points that we've talked about. And you can click on it and actually get direct Google Maps directions directly to that point. Or the video will, you can click on the video that's embedded into that location. You can play the video directly from that point. So that if you're interested in going to Jamestown, New York to go see Lucille Ball's town and get a tour of that, that one is the most recent one that's behind the membership. It's $5, and I have plans to do individual maps that you can buy, that you can get for more for other folks. If you just want one and you don't want anything else. But I only have 24 hours in the day. And Jen just does the history and the research, which is a lot, but the behind the scenes stuff is a lot too. So there's a lot of stuff there.
I see your quote, Charles Hogue, about Thomas Paine. I used the Thomas Paine quote when we did Washington Crossing, that these are the times to try men's souls.
Oh yeah.
He's so insightful words that he used during this time to just draw out inspiration and motivation for people during the revolution. But definitely he's a person that we need to hit on more. I think Patrick Daly as well.
Sorry, I'm going to try to pump our thing on Facebook here for just a second. So,
but no, we really do enjoy this, and we would like the feedback. We love the feedback. So if you want to tell us more places you want us to go, places that are close by, maybe we don't know about.
Yeah.
We did 3 hours to Clover, Virginia to talk about Henrietta Lacks. Like, that was a 3-hour drive, but I felt she was important. Like, people needed to know who she was. And
Clover, Virginia, it might be population of like 100 or 200 people. It is like a blip.
Yes.
There is nothing there. There's the main street. There's a church. There's a couple other things.
But we'll drive. If the story is, I feel like if the story definitely has influenced Americans and people should know more about it, we'll go.
I mean, it was 2.5, 3 hours when we drove from Erie, Pennsylvania out to Indiana, Pennsylvania to go to the Jimmy Stewart Museum in Jimmy Stewart's hometown, which actually Jimmy Stewart's hometown episode travel guide is free.
Yeah.
And that one, we have points all over the town. But that one was actually really, really cool.
And that town pretty much looks the same as when Jimmy Stewart grew up there.
Yeah.
And it's quintessential. It reminds you of Bedford Falls if you watch His Wonderful Life. Like, he grew up in the small town that he almost portrays in that movie.
Yeah. And little known fact, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Jimmy Stewart's hometown, claims to be the Christmas tree capital of the world.
Yes. Yeah.
So apparently the whole Christmas tree kind of farming thing started in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Just a random aside. I learned that just by driving out there.
But if you watch that video, I stand on his front porch.
Yeah.
Because I was so awesome.
It's someone's house.
But we try to do museums as well. We feel like that's important, especially like I said, I have that graduate certificate in museum studies, and I've worked at some museums. I've worked at the Erie Maritime Museum, that's devoted to the War of 1812 and Oliver Hazard Perry. I worked at the James Garfield House, the 20th president of the United States for 200 days. He was assassinated. And his house is pretty much considered the first presidential library, because after he was assassinated, his wife preserved all of his books and his writings, because she thought people would find that of value someday, and they did, and they do. So, and then I've worked at the Macarthur Memorial, and that is dedicated to General Douglas MacArthur. And so doing that work, seeing what happens to museums, even in good economies, but during the pandemic, how hard they were hit, we try to spotlight museums, tell you why you should go there, what artifact do they have that has an amazing story that you want to see and be in the presence of. So we try to bring that also to our viewers. So that's another thing. So if you ever notice the red stamp, like we have a black stamp that we use if we like stamped a location, we have a red stamp, like for our
museum.
Our trademark when we do a museum. So we have a museum here to do, a folk art museum, Rockefeller. So I don't know if people realize how much Rockefeller is an influence here in Colonial Williamsburg.
Yeah.
So Rockefeller's son stepped in with a bunch of money in the 1920s to preserve Colonial Williamsburg and to kind of bring this back into a tourism area for people to come and see. And
cool.
Williamsburg had moved from the capital, Virginia, in 1780 because Thomas Jefferson wanted more protection from Richmond, Virginia, because this is on the waterway. He felt it was very exposed, so he wanted to move to Richmond, Virginia. And so because of that, this area, and we learned this today from our driver,
our carriage, yeah.
This place stayed pretty much untouched because after the capital moved away, nobody really lived here anymore. And so nobody knocked down buildings and no one built anything up or took anything down. So when Rockefeller stepped in to kind of bring this back to what it looked like in colonial times, it was easier to do.
Yeah.
There's 88 buildings that are original, and there's 120 that were reconstructed. And they're reconstructed. This is a reconstruction house. But what they did, I think the fireplace is original. So this is original brick. This was original foundation. But what they do is they get historians to come in, show where the plot lines were. They find newspaper articles, they find advertisements, they find journals to say who lived there, what they did. So all those placards on every house here is telling you who occupied that home. Is it original? Is it a reconstruction? And they build them to how they looked in the 1700s. So that's what's so neat about Colonial Williamsburg. But one of the things...
Yeah, Abel, Route 66, that's definitely a bucket.
We want to do it.
It'll happen.
We'll do it.
One day.
We'll do the whole thing.
And it might not be soon, but it'll happen. Route 60. In fact, Jen actually has a historian friend who received a grant to do some videos on Route 66.
Well, he didn't do videos, he did a blog.
Okay.
And what his whole grant was to see the influence of tourism on Route 66 via the pandemic. So did businesses lose? Did they have to close down on Route 66? Which it's already struggling because most people only take it for nostalgia.
Right.
Were any businesses really adversely affected by the pandemic? That was his grant. And he did a blog on it. But I was like, I wish I could go with you and do videos of it and talk about the influence of not only the places you stopped and what they did for Americana, but the whole route, the whole drive in itself, but connecting.
And Ray, I see you said that your sister lives near Jamestown, New York. If you ever get to go back and visit her, I would recommend the Lucy Desi Museum. It was actually pretty cool.
It's very cool. They're very big influences.
So it was kind of their life and then their work, right? Them in television. It was you saw a little bit in our video, but going in person was definitely really, really neat. Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't get to do that we wanted to was the comedy museum.
Yeah, we didn't do the comedy museum.
And that celebrated.
That's a whole different museum.
Like comedians from from everywhere.
Like Johnny Carson and Jimmy Fallon and Jack Benny. All these big influencers. But what I learned, again, going to these museums is what a big influence Desi and Lucy were on television.
Oh my gosh.
And what they did for all these casts and TV shows, it was just amazing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I would go back to the museum too. Yeah. It was so cool. Amazing. I would go back just so I don't have to be holding a camera the whole time. But
you didn't get to,
it was really neat. And please, guys, if you have questions too, we'll just kind of keep talking. But if you have questions about personal stuff, YouTube stuff, history stuff, suggestions, whatever. Yes, if anyone else in the live stream, in the chat, gets to go to the Lucy Desi Museum in Jamestown, New York, highly recommend it. We love promoting, and I'll call that a smaller museum because it is a smaller, even though it's pretty popular. But we love promoting those museums, and even just some of the ones, like we went to another one up in Buffalo that was the inaugural site for Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, so that was...
And it was just like totally random, like very small.
Yeah.
And it was kind of in the thick of the pandemic.
It was a house. So when
cool.
Teddy Roosevelt was inaugurated, because McKinley was assassinated, and he was assassinated at that World's Fair, basically the Pan American Exposition. And he did not want to be inaugurated in the same place where McKinley had passed. So he went to a friend's house that was like a mile away from where McKinley had passed. McKinley had passed at the house of the organizer of the Pan American Exposition. So I think he was a big Whig influencer of Buffalo. So probably one of the nicer houses of Buffalo. But Teddy Roosevelt had a friend that lived in Buffalo. And so he walked the mile to his house and was inaugurated in his house.
Yeah.
And no photographers there, so there's no pictures of it. But that house has since become a museum. So when we did that story, it was a bigger story, right? We had to do, what's a Pan American Exposition? What's a World's Fair? Why was McKinley assassinated? How did the person even get close to him? What I think his name was Shulgus. Like, what was his beef? Like, why was he upset? And then what happened?
1907, 1906,
1904.
I don't know. It was so early 1900s.
And I mean, and Teddy Roosevelt had only been VP for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, so it was, it was a very interesting story. Plus, I learned. So this is something I learned. I'm a huge It's a Wonderful Life fan, and it's my favorite movie. And when they sing Buffalo Girls, Won't You Come Out Tonight? They're singing about Buffalo, New York. I didn't know that. The sailors who come into port in Buffalo from the Great Lakes are looking for a good time. And I guess the Buffalo Girls are fun. So that's what that song's about.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So it is you always are learning more stuff. And so when we did that video is when we saw the huge cemetery there. And then we went back and did the cemetery in Buffalo, New York. And that's where Rick James is, and Aretha Franklin's mother, and the president.
The president, who was
what was his name? Millard? I forget now.
Oh, I forget now. I'm totally drawing a blank.
Fillmore?
No, I was thinking of Elliot Ness.
Oh, Elliot Ness was Cleveland.
Was that Cleveland?
Mm-hmm. And he had no idea who Elliot Ness was. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about on the live stream today, Millard Fillmore. Yes.
Millard Fillmore.
Yeah. We didn't get to go inside because it was closed for the pandemic stuff, but it was a gorgeous cemetery outside. There was people running and all that stuff. So,
what are you talking about?
For Millard Fillmore?
No, you're talking about James Garfield.
James Garfield. my free sparkling cider.
Yes. Okay. So James Garfield is buried in Cleveland, Ohio, and has his own huge kind of mausoleum that you can go inside. And if you go inside, there's a marble statue of him, and he's laid in state. I mean, it's not open, but his coffin is there with the flag on it. And you couldn't go inside at the time because of the pandemic. But Millard Fillmore is outside. He has a gate around it, but you can go inside.
So one thing that, Jen, I wanted you to tell the people on the live stream tonight about was some of the folks who are actually related to some of the people that we've covered that have actually reached out to you. So there's been two most recently. So our Emmett Till videos recently kind of got caught up in the algorithm, and one of them has 30 to 40,000 views now.
Oh yes.
And so one of the I'll say characters, but one of the people that Jen talks about in the Emmett Till process. So this was a very interesting story. When I talk about Emmett Till, my third video, I go to the funeral home, and I talk about the lie. There's a lie. That's a big lie with the trial, and the person who embalmed. And I use embalmed loosely because you couldn't really even embalm Emmett Till. His body was so bad; it was mostly put in formaldehyde, but preserved so well that even when they exhumed his body to test his DNA, it looked pretty much the same as it did when he was his casket was open. The person had done such a good job. Well, the person who did that was Charles Jackson. I think that was his name. But African-American man did that because at the time, white people would not embalm black people. So it was a black man who embalmed Emmett Till. But in the trial, it's a white man who testifies, who owns the funeral home, that he embalmed Emmett Till. And he'll testify that you couldn't tell his age. It wasn't a young man. This is the whole lie of the Emmett Till trial, that it was not Emmett Till. So we make this video, it gets caught up in the algorithm.
Yes. And his
He's like his nephew or
nephew reaches out.
So the nephew of the black man who actually did the actual embalming of Emmett Till reaches out to Jen and says, "Hey, my uncle, thank you for talking about my uncle."
Video with people.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling the truth about my uncle. Thank you for telling the truth that he was the one who did it.
Right.
Thank you for letting people know, because even there was a miniseries called Women of the Movement, and they didn't even tell the truth in that. That was the one thing that wasn't very accurate about that. I think they did a great job, but and they were upset about that. And so they kept sharing my video saying, no, it was my uncle who did it. And so.
Oh, hi, Carla.
That was very touching. It felt important to me, again, telling the truth and making sure the truth was out there, but then someone that resonated with their family, and then they were able to share that.
Yeah. So I was just so super surprised that we make this video about a subject matter that Jen thinks is important to cover. We make a mini series, right? A 3-part series about Emmett Till. And those videos were, honestly, they were really difficult for me to make, because just kind of an emotionally draining topic and a mentally draining topic.
It's hard.
It was really difficult. And I even told her afterwards, I was like, hey, we need to kind of go a little bit lighter on the subject matter for a little while after this. But we make these videos, they get picked up. The gentleman's nephew sees it and reaches out and says, hey, thank you for telling the truth about my uncle. Thank you for telling that accurately. I just thought that was such a cool example of the impact that we can have, right? Just as people who have a YouTube history channel, and for the community like you guys, watching the videos and sharing the videos and doing all that stuff. I want to say hi to Carla again. My daddy's green eyes there in the chat.
Yeah, she's a big supporter.
She's a great supporter. She's a patron number 2 behind John Sarver, another Navy friend of ours. And then another person that has reached out to Jen most recently was actually after our Henrietta Lacks video.
Henrietta Lacks' cousin.
So Henrietta Lacks, her cousin,
reached out to me.
Reached out to Jen and said, thank you.
Thank you for telling her story. Thank you for telling people about her. And then what she did was she invited me into the Henrietta Lacks family Facebook page. Yeah. She just invited me into it. But she was like, a lot of people don't know her story. Even though the movie came out and the book came out, people still don't know her story. And so she was just very thankful that somebody is telling it, and it's important to them. It's important to get it out to people. And so it's just nice that family reaches out and sees that and finds that important. So that, as a historian, that always feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just such a cool thing. And again, it's another thank you to you guys, the community, the Walk with History community, because you guys kind of keep the grease on the skids that kind of keeps this channels moving. And then eventually someone somewhere starts Googling a topic more, and the algorithm picks it up, and we get more views and this, that, and the other. So it's really, not only do we just like doing this, not necessarily even for the views, but the fact that we can kind of, as my mom said right there, bring truth to light. And going back to Jen's graduate degree and her graduate work and what she learned going through her master's courses of approaching history with a critical eye, and almost scientific to a point, but again, having the empathy to tell the true story. It's just been really neat to kind of see some of these subjects and some of these topics grow as some of these videos pick up some steam and kind of what's behind them.
Yes. And it is, like I said, it is work. We bring our kids with us. We make this a family thing.
Yes.
We make this a family event. But this is important work, and history is important work, and being honest and truthful. So they say that where the community finds its most truthful people is in the museum world, that they have more public trust there, that you feel like a museum is telling you the honest truth. And so as a historian, I want to uphold that public trust. That's important to me. I want you to feel like you can trust what I'm saying, that I'm doing my research, that I'm going to be well-rounded. I'm going to look at the primary sources. I'm going to look at the thought-leading historians, and I'm going to say what they have said. I'm not going to tell you what I think happened. I'm going to tell you what documents show, and then you can make your own conclusions from that. But I think those are important stories to tell, and people, I think you lose some of that sometimes. And that's kind of why I got into this work, is people will tell you, well, this is what happened, right? This is what I think happened. This is what I heard happened. And what I learned is people learn history kind of differently, and maybe have been told it differently.
Thanks, Jim.
So I want to kind of bring that back to some level where it's equal and we're all learning the same thing from the same area on the same subject. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I always appreciate.
We're going to do the Wright brothers.
Yeah, we are. And actually April.
That's coming up.
Yeah, we're going down to North Carolina over spring break, and we're going to try to cram as many videos in as we can. Wright brothers, some Blackbeard.
Yeah, some Blackbeard. So some pirate history.
So
that's a very interesting, I learned this in grad school, how much of these smaller communities were kept alive by pirates. And because these smaller communities traded with pirates, and pirates could come in and bring some commerce to them and bring goods to them, kept these smaller communities alive. And so how much they actually influenced life in colonial times. And there was pushback from some very high thought leaders in the history world, trying not to give pirates that much credit for influencing life to that degree. But the facts show that these pirates going into these smaller areas and actually trading and helping sustain the communities actually help these areas to thrive and to live. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, so we are going to do some Wright brothers. We're going to do some Blackbeard kind of pirate history stuff. Again, we mentioned we're going to be doing we're going to try to get up to Richmond a little bit more because there's a ton of history up there.
Yes.
But
we'll do some Blackbeard, some Wright brothers. That's North Carolina. And then definitely get up to Richmond, do some more history up there. Probably get out to more Western Virginia. We'll be out there too. Maybe get some history out there.
Oh, that's right.
But again, if you have an area that's not too far away, we're very interested in what interests you. And again, we try to cover Civil War, World War II, colonial times. I love French Indian. I saw you mention French Indian. I love French Indian work. That's where I grew. I mean, that's Pittsburgh area.
And we do pop culture, right? We do pop culture. We did Bret Michaels' hometown because Jen loves Bret Michaels and Poison. So that's not really history, but that we'll just call it history.
There was some influence there. Mechanicsburg is the northernmost skirmish of the Civil War.
Yeah. So so we've got plenty of
So we did Williamsburg and Blackbeard. We did a whole episode about the pirates that were brought here and put on trial.
His crew. He was actually killed in North Carolina.
He was killed in the fight. So when the governor of Williamsburg tells them to go down to North Carolina and get him, he dies in that fight. But they bring 14 back.
Yeah, they bring a bunch of his crew back
2
here.
Were acquitted, 14 are killed.
Like half a mile from where we're sitting right now.
And we go to that jail and we tell you kind of that story. So we do that. That video is on our channel, Abel, if you want to see that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's been a blast. And
thank you so much. We love our community.
Yeah.
We love you guys.
Yeah. I love that I recognize every single one of these. That's a random one. But I love that I recognize everybody except the most recent comment there. Who comments on our videos, right?
If you have any questions about this house and
feel free to ask questions as we're sitting here on the live stream too, because we'll just kind of sit on the live stream as long as you guys are interested. So that's half the fun is talking to you guys and seeing comments on a daily or weekly basis, and having folks. I love when folks say like, hey, I'm just getting to your video now, it's been a few days and I've been really busy and I'm just watching it, but it was great or whatever like that. Like I love seeing stuff like that because it shows that
try to get out there.
It shows that you guys really are part of the community. So again, I really do appreciate it. And if you guys do want to support, again, there's 3 ways you can join our membership here on YouTube. It's the cheapest way, and really it gets you like a little YouTube badge. It's $2 a month.
Or you could just subscribe to our channel.
Even just being a subscriber, right? The other ways, are our Patreon, or you can check out walkwithhistorygiftshop.com and you can buy t-shirts, and we actually just put some new like coffee mugs and stuff up there. some fun little kind of Uncle Sam type coffee mugs that have our tagline for the curious, the explorers, and the history lovers out there. So we love doing that stuff. If you guys have ideas, or if you guys want,
my daddy's green eyes wants more Ben Franklin. I'll definitely give you more Ben Franklin.
Okay, yeah, that's an uncle. That's cool.
So one of my best friends lives in
Philly. Ray, you do a great job commenting.
And Ben Franklin is not just in Philadelphia, but there is great Benjamin Franklin history in Philadelphia. He's buried in Philadelphia.
And her best friend from college lives in Philly, so we should do a trip up there. But yeah, if you guys have ideas for things that you'd be interested in, even just product wise, right? Or even on our website over at walkwithhistory.net, something that you like, maybe you want to see an expanded blog post or something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm always open to feedback. I love getting that feedback because that helps me. I might think I have a direction and you guys are kind of help me course correct. To use Navy terms, apologies for that. But yeah, this has really been a blast. The past year, so I think it'll be 1 year as of the 24th.
Yes.
Our first upload was February 24th, 2020, and today we have 2,150.
Yeah.
Subscribers, which is just
amazing.
Again, thank you to you guys. You guys are a huge part of that. Mm-hmm. I thought we might be close to 1,000 because there's YouTubers out there who struggle for 2-3 years to try and get just up to 1,000. And we got.
Thank you. My dad has been nice.
And we got, I'd say lucky, but we also knew what we were doing, and we worked hard with our Arlington video that within 7 months, we were at 1,000 subscribers and monetized. Yeah,
I think that if you find something that you're passionate about and you believe in, whether or not that brings the subscribers and the viewers, it's something that speaks to you. And that's how Arlington was for me.
Right.
It spoke to me. I needed to tell that story. I wanted to tell that story. And I think, like, again, not a lot of people had done Arlington in that way. And so I think that really was influential. And that's kind of how I met History Underground. And I think that's how I even met Wit Docs.
Yeah.
I met you through that as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like those were people that I had seen done Arlington. I reached out, hey, I did it too. Let's talk about how we did it and where we walked and what we said. And what I find is everybody wants to help each other. We want to collaborate together. We want to we want to support each other, and then we want to help each other. So that's been great. That community has been really great.
Yeah. So it's been an absolute blast. And so that's been the past year. Now moving forward from here, I really just kind of seeing us, and Abel had kind of mentioned it earlier, is kind of continuing to build our library. Mm-hmm. Because what I truly believe is there's a whole bunch of people out there that like our videos. They just don't know we exist yet. Right. So I really do believe that. And Chris from Wit Docs has kind of told us over and over. He's like, I think you guys are going to be huge. And God bless you, Chris. Like, if you guys want to check out his channel or listen to the History Buzz podcast.
Oh, we did a podcast.
We did a podcast with Chris. It was a ton of fun. But I really do think the next step is us kind of just continuing to do what we're doing and refine our video process and just having fun with it.
Have fun.
Right. And telling stories and talking about the impact that these people that we talk about in our videos had on history. I think that is the biggest thing here. That's the coolest thing to me that I try to drive home in every single video is all of these characters, whether it's Henrietta Lacks, Emmett Till, Maureen O'Hara, right? I mean, just from an actress and acting perspective, right? Maureen O'Hara plays this strong, independent woman, right? That contributes towards societal changes, whether people acknowledge that or not. Oliver Hazard Perry, right? All these random people, maybe not so much Bret Michaels, right? Of Poison, but maybe musically there. But
where's the bear hat? It's over. It's kind of hot with the fire.
Yeah,
but I brought it. The bear hat is here.
Yeah, we do have the bear hat. And that's my other favorite thing is she'll do a video with a bear hat on. She won't even acknowledge that she has it on. She just kind of she owns it 100%.
I love that hat. But we do like George Wythe So we do people who signed the Declaration of Independence.
Who you may not know.
You may not know, even though Thomas Jefferson made sure that he saved a big spot for him.
Yeah.
And this is a person who influenced America so much. American law is built on George Wythe.
He was like the first American law professor.
Yes. And he's writing what will become judicial laws. Like he's influencing the Supreme Court. He's influencing how law is going to happen in America, which is a huge influence on our lives today. And people don't even know who he is.
Yeah,
so
I mean, really, unless you go to William and Mary Law School, because it's named after him.
Yes.
I had never heard of George Wythe before, but then you look at the Constitution. Look at where Thomas Jefferson signed the Constitution, or Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Look at where Thomas Jefferson signed. Look a couple spots above that, and there's a big old George Wythe, right? Mm-hmm. George with a G, Wythe with a W.
Yeah.
And it's right there. And Thomas Jefferson specifically saved that spot for him to sign because he wasn't there the day all the original signers signed it. He came back a couple days later.
Yes.
So we cover these interesting characters, and I'm learning this, right? Again, as a non-history fan. And I'm like, man, this person had this massive impact. So that's typically the story that we try to tell is we try to tell you like, hey, you may have heard of this, or you may kind of know what this person did.
Yes, you know.
But we're going to tell you.
Did.
We're going to tell
them.
Yeah, we're going to tell you more about what they did or who they were.
Yes.
And why they're so important. And how they had an impact on you.
So that's basically with Emmett Till. How much Rosa Parks, she thought of Emmett Till when she sat on that bus.
She was inspired by Emmett Till.
So I make sure Emmett Till, when Martin Luther King does his march on DC, he does it the day that Emmett Till was murdered.
That's right, Greg.
Like that, he makes sure like the influence that these people have that you may not know is felt through history. These people are having influence. And so I want people to see that. Like I talk about the sit-in movement, and these are the kids that saw those pictures in the magazine of Emmett Till.
Yeah.
They're the same age as Emmett Till. So when they go to college, they're like, I'm going to make a difference now. I'm going to do something.
They're the ones who do the peaceful sit-ins.
So I'm like, where does that come from? Where do these people come from? What's sparking them to do something?
Yeah.
And then we just did Nat Turner. And that's a story that really barely gets touched sometimes. And so I want to talk about Nat Turner because he's sparking Civil War.
All right. So he was, if you haven't watched that video, so Nat Turner was a slave in the 1830s.
Yeah. The uprising happens in 1830.
1830s. So there's called Nat Turner's Rebellion. Mm-hmm. And he led this slave rebellion in kind of central Virginia. Mm-hmm. And eventually it was squashed. But what happened after Nat Turner's rebellion, and I didn't know this, was it catapulted the conversation about slave rights, not only into kind of American politics more at the time, but also global politics. Yes. So England saw and actually heard about what happened.
Mm-hmm. And they changed they abolished slavery.
And that may have not been the thing, but that was something that contributed to England changing their laws and abolishing slavery.
But America went the other way. America was like, now we're going to make stronger enslavement laws. We're going to make it so an slave cannot learn to read or write or learn religion by themselves. We're going to make it even stronger. So what happens when that swung that way, then it made it so Civil War was going to be inevitable.
Yeah. And so here we are in the middle of nowhere, Virginia.
Again, a story that doesn't seem like it wants to be told.
I mean, it's taught. I'd say more so because we're here in Virginia. Sure. I never learned the story when I was growing up in California. And we talk about some of that stuff on some of our podcasts. But here we are, standing next to the historic marker and like half a dozen donkeys across the street, right smack in the middle of like where this happened. And this uprising, even though it was violent and it was, there was a lot of badness there, but it was an event that catapulted the conversation and really had a global and everlasting impact. So that's one of the things that I really do enjoy about doing this channel with Jen. aside from the fact that I get to play with all like the tech stuff and I get to figure things out and,
Thank God.
and do all that. And she does all the research and picks the topics. And I trust her. She's like, hey, Nat Turner, hey, Henrietta Lacks. I was like, who's Henrietta Lacks? I was like, I have no idea. I've heard the HeLa cells. I was like, I was a political science major. Science was not my forte, right? It was more on the other side of things. But learning about these people in history has truly been amazing. And being able to share their story and getting that confirmation that family members of these people are reaching out saying, thank you for telling their story. That means that just means the absolute world. So we have things like that. We have you guys, the community, reaching out and commenting, every day, every week, all the time. We absolutely love it. So, and we thank you guys for your support. And again, we're always open for feedback. I think I had put my email in the chat somewhere before. I'll put my email. I'll put our email in the chat if you guys want to send us.
Yeah, Marshall and Wythe statue are in front of the law school here, because Wythe, of course, the father of American law, and then Marshall is the longest serving Chief Justice. I think third serving Chief Justice, but the longest serving Chief Justice.
So we're always open to feedback. We're always looking for. There's plenty of history ideas out there. There's no shortage of historical topics.
But if you have something that you think is important, and maybe hasn't been done, and maybe you're like, I think this is something that people need to know, let us know.
Yeah,
because I really think there are stories that need to be told. So, but thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I don't know how much longer we're going to go here, because I've kind of covered all the things that unless you guys have any questions for us, if you guys have any last minute questions,
anything specific,
just toss them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. But overall, really where I see this channel going is just continuing to kind of keep doing what we're doing and getting better at it. Ideally, I would love to start being able to partner up with museums. That's one of the things that I would love to do is for us to kind of get big enough, for lack of a better word, for us to be able to reach out to a museum, say, hey, we're the Walk with History channel, folks. We want to come do, a walk there. Can you guys give us some behind the scenes access? Or
show us your most famous artifact.
Show us something that's not out there for the public so we can promote you guys.
Yes.
Or eventually, I would love for those museums to reach out to us and say, hey, we'll pay you guys a little bit to come out and promote our museum. And because you guys love doing that anyway. So, if you have a ton of subscribers or viewers, that's what we would love to do, and Jen always says like, well, hey, if the History Channel ever knocks on our door and gives us a call and says, hey, Walk with History should be on TV.
We could be the Chip and Joanna Gaines of history.
There you go. So we would definitely listen if the History Channel ever called us.
Yeah. Would you want to see America? Would you want to see America
Just
on the History Channel?
Travel America and talk about the historic spots in America and actually be there and learn that stuff. So we've got, plans and ideas and ways that you guys can support, aside from just being subscribers, but please don't ever feel obligated that you guys need to contribute monetarily. While we love that and it does help, whether it's through the YouTube subscription here, through Patreon, or through our gift shop at walkwithhistorygiftshop.com.
We're just thankful
to have you guys. I don't think we've spiked above 20 for this live stream, but I've enjoyed every single second of it because you guys have been here.
Yes.
And I consider you all friends and partners in crime, on the Walk with History channel.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for all
your
support.
So I think we're going to wrap things up here. So many museums. Yes. So we definitely want to keep doing the museums. We want to keep doing all that stuff.
Yes.
We're going to try to get better to the History Channel. Yes, I would love to do that. I need something to do once I retire. So, but we're going to try to get better about jumping back on the podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to about Talk with History podcast.
Yeah. So that way in your car, you can listen to, these are more behind the scenes of the videos.
Yeah.
So things you don't see. Things we kind of had to work through or find, or we got lost, or
thanks, Jim.
That was one of the things. Finding graves is very difficult sometimes, especially in a cemetery that's not very well laid out and doesn't have an office. So we talk about some of those things, like finding Henrietta Lacks' grave was a difficult thing to do. I think we actually talk about that on the video a bit, but those are the kind of things on the podcast we get more in depth for you.
Yeah.
kind of where the history took us and what our thought process was and what that looked like.
Yeah, and then we've done a couple the podcast called the History Buzz, and that is the much more informal where we talk to other people, either friends or I've started off with my brother because he was the first one to respond to me. We did another friend, and we talk about kind of how they learned history, some differences in regional history. That
what you remember.
I find super interesting because everybody learns history a little bit differently. So, we would love to interview, other folks that work in the history realm, whether it's in a museum or
please reach out to us if you would like to be on the History Buzz too. If you have a moment of history that was greatly influential to you, we'd like to hear about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Your age, your background, or even regionally, because it's very interesting what people remember and how they remember it. So that's an influencer. You have to understand people is to understand how they have learned their past.
Yeah. So I would encourage you guys, if you haven't heard those, to just check them out. And so it's just been very interesting. Again, Talk with History is a little bit more behind the scenes and in depth of our episodes.
Yeah.
And the History Buzz is more kind of learning about how each of us learn history, what we remember in our youth, things like that. And that's always very interesting because we usually are all kind of friends coming together. Yeah. We tend to try to have fun with it, maybe have a drink or something like that, which we actually have merchandise for that as well.
Yes.
So nice little drinking glass if you guys are interested. I'm very proud of that one.
Yeah, he makes all those though.
But thank you, Ray, and everybody for telling us that we should be on the History Channel. I agree. So if you know any executives there, just give them our email.
Yes.
But I think we're gonna hang it up here. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Thank you for spending time
thanks,
with
Mom.
us. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday night to be with us here in Colonial Williamsburg in a colonial home.
Yes.
And I'm thankful.
Martha Washington's grandfather's property. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Lewis house that we are staying in. So you can actually look it up if you Google the Lewis house, Colonial Williamsburg. But thank you guys all so very much. We're thankful for the past year, and you guys have been a part of that.
Yes.
I truly, truly appreciate it. I love seeing your comments daily and weekly. And you guys are part of what helps fuel the fire for me to sit down there and just edit a little bit more and make it a little bit better. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the next year and the next 5 years because I really do believe that this can go for the long haul here. We may need some breaks here and there. Being in the military, every now and then we got to move. We got to do this, that, and the other. But your guys' support makes it that much easier, that much better. And so again, thank you so much.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you.
Truly, thank you guys so much. Yeah. So we will hang it up here, and maybe
you know how to reach out to us.
You guys know how to reach out to us.
Available via comments as well.
Yeah. So the best place to kind of get all of the different ways to support or reach out to us is our website, walkwithhistory.net. If you just save that, there's an about contact page. There's all the different ways you can support. All the different stuff is at our website, walkwithhistory.net. We couldn't get the .com because someone's sitting on it for like $10,000. So the guy emails me like once a year. He's like, "Hey, you want to buy it for $10K?" And I was like, "No, I'll give you $10 for it." So
it's .net for now.
So it's .net until you can come down off of $10,000 for walkwithhistory.com. But it's walkwithhistory.net. You can find all our stuff there. So again, thank you guys so much. Thank you for hanging out with us on a Saturday night on a live stream on YouTube. And to anybody else watching this in the future,
love you, Mom.
For anybody else watching this in the future, we will both say on to our next
Walk with History.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
That was good.